Hello, Africa and the rest of the world. Welcome to News Central Television Studios, reaching you live from Lagos, Nigeria's economic capital. I'm Sulaiman Ahmed, and these are the headlines for this hour. Nigeria's Kaduna state declares head of the country's main labor union wanted for economic sabotage. Workers in Mali begin a 4-day strike over wages, bonuses and allowances. WHO issues new guidance on expired COVID-19 vaccines. Details of these and more shortly. We'll begin in Nigeria, where the government of the northwestern state of Kaduna has declared the president of the main labor union wanted for economic sabotage and alleged attacks on public infrastructure under the Miscellaneous Offences Act. The governor of the state, Nasir El-Rufai, has also placed a bounty on the leaders of the labor union. The governor says anyone with information on the whereabouts of the NLC president, W.H.O, will be rewarded.
And we have traveled this route so many times in this country, no less in Kaduna State. And one would have imagined that a pro-people acclaimed government like that of Ero, of circumventing what is happening at the moment. There's hardly any time, anywhere you can win win a war against an organized labor in the way and manner they are constituted at the moment. That is not to say that there are no flip sides of the whole action, the way it is playing out currently. But listening to the message of the government as a few moments ago, declaring a citizen of this country wanted, as if you are the Inspector General of Police who is in pursuit of a criminal, leaves much to be desired, no less in labor relations. I would imagine that the issue that has culminated into the protests, into the 5-day protest, had some backgrounds. And what we don't do usually in this country is to allow those situations to deteriorate so badly that the usual fire brigade approach is now adopted as though we never had options to deal with the fundamentals in the first place. So my advice would be that there is no need for hot airs. There is no need for grandstanding. There is no need under the law to pretend as if there are these processes are not regulated by legislation. It is time to retrace our steps on both sides and then see how dialogue and negotiation can win the game this time around.
Well, in response, the Labour Union President, W.H.O, has dared the Governor El-Rufai to arrest him, saying the protest was not about him, but about the welfare of the generality of the workers. For more on the impasse between the Labour Union and the Kaduna State Government, I'm now being joined by Kunle Rashid Adegoke, a senior advocate of Nigeria. Good to have you join me, Mr. Adegoke. Well, Mr. Adegoke, Governor El-Rufai has accused the Labour Union of economic sabotage in his state, citing the Miscellaneous Offences Act. Does the governor have a legal leg to stand on, and is this the proper recourse to deal with the agitations of the labour unions?
Right. The crisis has festered for so long that the approach of the government may have to be reviewed. And the reason behind it is no matter how noble the intention of the governor might be at the beginning with respect to qualifications of workers, with respect to the number of qualified workers within the employ of the government, no matter how noble the intention may be with the issue of maybe right-sizing, considering maybe the number of ghost workers that were collecting salaries without rendering service and what have you, the approach of the government needs a lot of review. And in this respect, the government cannot adopt a fire brigade approach, cannot adopt a firefighting approach to the issue. There is the need to negotiate, to discuss with the workers. There is always the need to even make such going to implement such a decision. Leaders of the various unions around in the state, where the government has failed to do that, and there are agitations in the workers for against such a policy of the government's, a firefighting approach to say that workers should be arrested, leaders should be arrested. What if they were arrested? That means that, okay, they will be prosecuted and probably be jailed. No matter what the legislative backbone the government may have for its decision, it is not the time to adopt such a big stick approach. And this is where I will implore the governor to, it is not a question of ego. It is not a question of dragging powers with the subjects of the state. It is a situation that calls for a critical negotiation with the people that are involved, with the various labor unions, and make sure that these issues can be resolved peacefully without necessarily resorting to all these fire-spitting efforts.
Let me quickly comment here. You're a lawyer. Now you're talking about some of the key things. Some say the governor is setting a bad precedent for other governors to toe in Nigeria. Does he, as a governor in Nigeria, constitutionally speaking, has the right to declare a citizen of Nigeria, like the labor union president wanted?
Well, it is a militaristic approach, which I believe that the governor shouldn't have done in the first place. Every Nigerian citizen has a right to protest, to even press home his demands by way of strikes. And if that is the case, to declare a labor leader wanted for embarking or leading a protest or a strike action on behalf of workers is to adopt a militaristic approach. And the implication is that our leaders, our political leaders, have not really removed the toga that they inherited from the military. And whatever could be the provision of the law that could have been infringed upon in the process, there is a procedure for setting such a machinery in motion. And in this instance, that it is a strike action that is being carried out, there is no basis for the governor to issue such a declaration. It's just like issuing a fatwa by a religious fanatic. It is similar to such a particular step. The governor at the beginning, I want to believe, had a noble intention with respect to the steps being taken with respect to workers' qualifications and the right of people to be within the service and rendering those service and what have you. But the workers are saying that the government has gone the right boundary of the law with respect to labor relations. The best thing for the government to do is to call for dialogue, is to call for negotiation.
Let's close on this quickly, Mr. Adegoke. How can this impasse be resolved? Because at the moment, we understand in Nigeria, the union is saying, especially the electricity arm is saying that on Thursday this week, there just might be total blackout, national blackout. How can this be resolved?
It is going to be a total crumbling of the entire system. And that is not in the best interest of anybody. I will at the same time implore the governor to shed his sword, call the labor unions to a round table. In fact, he can bring in some of his colleagues to broker a truce in this instance. It doesn't have to be the one even doing it if there is no confidence reposed in him by the striking workers. So it is important that he seeks a resolution of this situation without necessarily trying to fight it to the end. Otherwise, the economy of the state will not only be crushed, the economy of the nation will be brought to a standstill. We have enough crisis at hand, and we cannot afford to compound it with such a national approach to a state issue being embarked upon by the nurses, by the electricity workers. And before you could say Jack Robinson, now to compound the security situation that we the insecurity situation that we have found ourselves. To avoid that, the government will have to quickly take efforts towards resolving this crisis.
Kunle Rashid Adegoke, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, many thanks for your time. Well, Nigeria's main opposition party, the People's Democratic Party, has accused the ruling All Progressives Congress of attempting to gag state governors. National Publicity Secretary of the PDP, Kola Ologbodiyan, who made the accusation, also called for an end to the spate of insecurity in the country. Ologbodiyan said the current administration has failed in its primary responsibility of securing the lives and property of Nigerians, and as such should not stop genuine efforts being made by others to help resolve Nigeria's current insecurity crisis.
Our party insists that nobody can gag Nigerians. The People's Democratic Party condemns the desperate attempt by the All Progressives Congress to frustrate the aspiration of Nigerians in finding solutions to the alarming state of insecurity and economic hardship in the country, as embodied in the communique by the PDP governors at the end of their crucial meeting held in Ibadan on Monday. It is instructive to state that the PDP governors, as patrons, directly spoke the mind of the majority of Nigerians across the board in providing urgent measures that will end acts of terrorism and wanton killings in our country, as well as guaranteeing the national unity and economic well-being of every Nigerian. It is on record that these noble ideas of good governance have been wrecked by the APC administration in the last 6 years.
Well, Nigeria's federal government says it has concluded plans to improve security in the country's maritime sector and the Gulf of Guinea. Minister of Transportation, Rotimi Amechi, made this known when he received a delegation from the Belgian embassy in Abuja, led by Ambassador Daniel Bertrand. The Belgian envoy had come to present a letter of credence to the ministry, soliciting Nigeria's support for its candidate at the upcoming elections of the International Maritime Organization. He also assured Nigeria of Belgium's support in curbing maritime crimes along the nation's maritime corridor.
I have to give you an official request for receiving the support of the Nigerian government for the Belgian candidacy. As I already told you, we are very active in the maritime sector.
But if it is successful, then other countries in the Gulf of Guinea should adopt it. It's not successful. But what it means is that you are in the air, you are seeing what's happening in the water. If you are inside the water, you are able to respond. The helicopter has capacity to drop in.
Now, Germany has agreed to return all artifacts taken from Nigeria by 2022. The artifacts are those taken from the Benin Royal Court following the British incursion in 1849. The German Director General of Culture and Communication, Dr. Andreas Jorgen, stated this on Tuesday at an event at the country's capital, Abuja. Dr. Jorgen acknowledged Nigeria's Minister of Information, Lai Mohammed, that Nigeria has suffered a loss. He said Germany is on a restitution mission to Nigeria to return all artifacts taken from the Benin Empire. The artifacts are to be returned to Benin, Edo State capital in southern Nigeria. Now, staying in West Africa, Mali's Workers' Union has started a 4-day strike after alleged failed negotiations with the government over wages, bonuses and allowances. The strike, which began on Monday, is to demand better living and working conditions. The demonstrators are demanding the satisfaction of a 48-point demand transmitted to the authorities. The demonstrators are asking for the integration into the public service of all teachers in community schools. A UNTM official says the strike is being widely observed and the country is literally paralyzed. The United Nations Under-Secretary for Peace Operations, Jean-Pierre Lacroix, has told the Security Council that the fight against terrorist groups in the Sahel region has intensified. Lacroix, who spoke via video conference on Tuesday, said the groups are continuing to mobilize at regional, continental and international levels despite the ongoing context of the COVID-19 pandemic. He noted that Task Force Takuba is now fully operational and has been supporting Malian armed forces in combat.
It takes a variety of actors to confront the daunting challenges in the region, and coordination between security actors on the ground remains paramount. MINUSMA continued to provide logistical support to the 7 battalions operating under the command of the Joint Force within the framework of its mandate. All requests from the Joint Force related to petrol, oil, lubricants, and casualty evacuation have so far been honored. MINUSMA's responsive operational and logistic support to the Joint Force remain critical to the force's operations, especially in Sector Center. The provision of life support consumables by the mission has proven critical in sustaining the Joint Force as it continues to face major challenges with regard to its operational and logistical capacities in providing supplies to its troops, a problem worsened by a lack of suitable means of transport.
Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez says he will restore order in the country's territories in North Africa, where thousands of migrants have crossed from Morocco. This comes as Spain sends back around half of the 6,000 migrants who have entered Ceuta and Melilla since the weekend. Thousands of people swam or paddled around the border fence that juts out into the sea. One man, unfortunately, drowned. An extra 200 police have been sent to Ceuta to help officers patrolling the border with Morocco. Now, on the development, Ylva Johansson, European Commissioner for Home Affairs of the European Commission, called for a concerted effort managing the emergency. In Central Africa, 22 rebels have been killed since army troops of the Democratic Republic of Congo launched an offensive on May 6 against the ADF militia in the eastern part of the country. Now, spokesman for the regional army, Anthony Maulwashai, said on Tuesday that it also seized 8 AK-47 machine guns during the operation. He added that the army arrested 60 ADF collaborators, including about a dozen foreigners, mainly Ugandans. The Allied Democratic Forces, whose origins can be traced to Uganda, is the bloodiest of scores of armed militias in the mineral-rich zone. In neighboring Sudan, the head of the country's transitional government, Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, is defending the normalization of relations between Khartoum and Israel as the conflict in the Gaza Strip continues to escalate. Although he says it had nothing to do with the right of the Palestinians to create their own state, the current tensions between the state of Israel and Gaza is the fiercest hostilities between both states in years. Gaza's health officials say over 200 Palestinians have been killed in the latest violence, including 58 children and 28 women. In Israel, 10 persons have also been killed, including 10 children. Now, to Southern Africa, at least 110 cases of human trafficking have been recorded in Angola since January of 2021. Secretary of State for Human Rights and Citizenship, Ana Celeste Joanario, said most of the cases were registered in the province of Luanda, the capital, and in northern Zaire province, as well as western Luanda North province. Now, Joanario stressed that since 2014, Angola has been improving the national system for prevention, protection and assistance to victims of human trafficking, as well as bringing to court the perpetrators of the crimes. Now, still in the region, the government of Zimbabwe has suspended maize imports into the country. The move will enable the country to save over $300 million on the back of a bumper harvest the country has achieved this year. Owing to successive droughts experienced in recent years, Zimbabwe has been importing an average of 100,000 tons of maize per month from the region, and as far as South America. Government lifted the ban on private grain sales in October of 2019 and granted the nod to individuals and corporate bodies with free funds to invest in the production of maize. Zimbabwe requires about 1.8 million tons of maize annually. In the meantime, the UN Refugee Agency says it is deeply concerned that people fleeing violence in northern Mozambique are being refused asylum in neighboring Tanzania and are being forcibly returned. The UNHCR says it has received worrying reports that 1,500 people have been returned back this month and several thousand since the beginning of the year. Some had trekked for days. 750,000 people have been displaced since the conflict started in the country in 2017. Now, coming up, World Health Organization issues new guidance on expired COVID-19 vaccines. Details of these and more after the break. Stay with us. If you just joined us, you're welcome. You're watching the News Central Continental Prime. Now, the family of a Lagos-based chef, W.H.O, have laid blames on the tables of a private Lagos-based hospital, accusing the management of unprofessional conduct resulting in her untimely demise. The family of the deceased chef say an independent autopsy by pathologists at the Lagos State University Teaching Hospital showed that Mrs. Ogboma suffered internal bleeding after the surgical procedure. News Central's Molana Olalade attended the presser organized for the deceased and filed this report.
Nigerians continue to push for improved quality of healthcare services in the country through advocacy, direct service delivery, particularly the need for accountability on the part of healthcare providers. The Olisa Agbakoba legal in charge of the death of a Lagos-based chef, W.H.O, who died as a result of unprofessional medical conduct, shared the same position at a media chat organized for the deceased as he advocates for complete reform of the Nigerian healthcare system and for doctors to be accountable for medical negligence and malpractice.
Our task here is to ensure that the hospital and the doctors that conducted the surgery, if found, because I cannot say they will be, if found to be negligent, should be punished. So it will be a lesson.
One of the things that we've done is to engage all the relevant agencies in Lagos State in this matter, as well as the Medical Association. We've also written to the Lagos State House of Assembly requesting for a public hearing to review the health reforms as it is at the moment, so that it holds doctors more accountable and ensures that the hospitals have the right equipment to carry out this kind of procedures as well.
The husband of the deceased, Ogboma, blames the Lagos-based private hospital for the death of his wife and sees the opportunity to seek justice for thousands of victims of a faulty healthcare system.
We use this medium to call for healthcare reforms, where patients will have the rights and know their rights, and where doctors will be held accountable for malpractices and negligence. Then we have retained Olisa Agbakoba Legal and Primera Africa Legal to help us with all legal issues and representation.
Grieving family and friends of the deceased explain that their concerns are not just about W.H.O, but about lending supporting voices to women, particularly on health issues.
1 out of every 4 women would have this sort of surgery or something similar. So why are we losing our women to hands of people we can't call doctors? Why are we losing our women to proud people? I mean, I'm not going to say doctors, because if you're a doctor, then you'll be compassionate, you'll be nice, you'll be friendly, you'll care about the person. But we have none of that in this case.
There is no doubt that the Nigerian healthcare system has suffered several setbacks, but the people will remain optimistic about the future of the primary healthcare in the country. Omolola Ololade reporting for News Central.
Well, the World Health Organization has issued new guidance saying expired COVID-19 vaccines should now be destroyed. The WHO said it regrets having to give this advice, adding that there is just not enough data to know if the expired doses would be safe. This contradicts earlier advice from the head of the Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, Dr. John Nkengasong. Last month, he urged countries to use out-of-date vaccines, saying that they were safe up until July 13. A number of African countries have not been able to use up all their supplies and have been waiting for guidance. Now, Egypt is prioritizing the vaccination of tourism workers to support the sector's recovery and is on track to announce full inoculation of 2 resort areas this month. Tourism Minister Khalid Al-Nani made the announcement, stressing that tourism is an essential sector of the Egyptian economy. Al-Nani said the vaccination exercise will be carried out on workers in hotels, resorts, businesses and restaurants in South Sinai and the Red Sea. He said the vaccinations became necessary because about 65% of tourists in Egypt visit those coastal destinations. The tourism sector in the country has picked up in recent months, with more visitors heading to resorts along the Red Sea and Mediterranean coasts. Now, moving away from the coronavirus pandemic, residents of Gingirin Abattoir in Jos, the capital of Nigeria's north-central state of Plateau, have demanded justice for 2 minors allegedly sexually molested by a Lebanese resident known by many in the area as Simon. The situation led to the deployment of anti-riot policemen at the community police station as residents barricaded the station, demanding that the suspect should be released to them. They say there is an attempt to cover up the case because the minors, who are now pregnant, are from very poor families.
Only the girls and go back to the police station, not even the man. So the whole youth want to see the man. Where is the man? The whole youth want to see the man.
So our girls have been molested by a Lebanese man. Even though you are saying the girls are not hearing what, are you the one to teach them? You go there and be sleeping with the man. After you sleep with the girls, these girls have been, one of them has confessed. So these girls now are here, the Lebanese man is not here. Now, we want to see the man.
I don't know, this is his house.
See,
let us see his house. You need to go with this man. At the end of the day, the question is, you see how you
want the government to stand up because their parents don't have it. That doesn't mean that they should suffer. 2 of them are pregnant.
The police cannot manipulate. The suspect has been arrested and is currently at the State Criminal Investigation Department for investigation.
When the news returns, updates from the conflict in Gaza and the West Bank as the United Nations and World Health Organization say more than 220 people have now died. Join us again. Welcome back. Now, more than 220 people have now died in Gaza and the West Bank since violence erupted last week with Israel, and that's the toll has already risen to about 10 people. The United Nations stated this today in a call for greater access to the occupied Palestinian territory and an end to hostilities. Jens Lark from the Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs added that 6,000 people have also been injured. The OCHA spokesperson said nearly 60,000 people have also had to leave or flee their homes in Gaza, with 47,000 people now sheltering in UN Relief and Works Agency.
There are combined in the West Bank and Gaza Strip more than 6,000 injured. In Israel, the casualty count tragically as well, as of yesterday, stood at 10 total deaths and nearly 800 injured. We very much welcome the Israeli authorities' opening of Kerem Shalom crossing for essential humanitarian supplies 9 days into the crisis. It is critical that the Erez crossing is also opening for the entry and exit of critical humanitarian staff.
The Gaza Strip, 19 health facilities have been damaged, including destruction of the Hala al-Shawa primary healthcare clinic. In the West Bank, 41 health workers have been injured and 21 health vehicles damaged. The severe damage to the roads and infrastructure makes access to many of the hospitals very, very difficult. In the Gaza Strip, 46% of essential drugs and 33% of essential medical supplies are at zero stock. That's less than 1 month, but it basically means they don't have that. So almost half of essential drugs.
Well, the International Organization for Migration, government of Bangladesh and the UN High Commissioner for Refugees have launched a $943 million plan to safeguard the well-being and dignity of the Rohingya refugees in the country and their host communities. Now, UN High Commissioner for Refugees Filippo Grandi explained that the appeal was presented by 134 partners, including UN agencies, international NGOs, and a majority of Bangladeshi NGOs. He also called for action to address the political crisis affecting Myanmar now.
Up to now, $340 million, meaning 36% of this plan, have been funded. This morning there were several pledges, but several other countries said they will consider contributing going forward. This is very important. The solution, in spite of the challenges, needs to continue to be pursued in Myanmar. This is why UNHCR and other UN agencies and NGOs are also present and continue to be present in Rakhine State, working to try and create conditions for people to return. Clearly, this has not happened so far because besides the work that we do, more action needs to be taken on the Myanmar side in terms of freedom of movement, access to services, ending the discrimination that has caused, in fact, the exodus of people into Bangladesh.
Well, finally on World Wrap, police officers involved in the April shooting of a black motorist in North Carolina will not face criminal charges over his death. This comes as district attorneys from Elizabeth City said the shooting of 42-year-old Andrew Brown was justified. Officials say Mr. Brown drove his car at police during the 44-second encounter. His family, however, disagrees with authorities and say he was executed after an independent inquiry found he was shot 5 times, including in the back. His death on April 21 has led to continuing protest against police brutality. The Kenyan's Finance Bill of 2021 was introduced for first reading in the National Assembly on May 5 and has proposed to remove the requirement of the Cabinet Secretary, National Treasury and Planning to table any value-added tax regulations to Parliament for approval. According to experts, if this proposal is passed into law, then National Treasury will be able to come up with new tax measures and implement them without any oversight from the National Assembly. Earlier today on Business Edge, we spoke to Ntwalu Nsoni, an economist and researcher from Zambia.
Their interest, of course, is to have the loan paid back, and before giving the loan, they usually impose conditionalities, or in this case, they call it advice to countries in terms of how they can ensure that in the long term they can be able to raise their own revenues. But unfortunately, some of what is proposed is blind with regards to its effect on the citizenry. So a country can get an IMF facility of a lot of resources, be restricted in spending it on things that are really beneficial to the citizens, like social protection, spend it on probably something to do with balancing up balance of payments. But in the end, to pay back the facility, they have to increase a tax like the value-added tax or other consumption taxes because they're easy to collect.
Well, there's more on the business side of our news. Back to Tolulokwe.
Hello and welcome. This is Business on NC Continental Prime. I'm Tolulokwe Adelaru Balogun. International ratings firm Moody's has said that South Africa's low economic growth and rising debt burden could see socioeconomic tension intensify and impede policy reforms. The warning comes as part of the credit firm's annual report. Moody's says South Africa's credit profile is balanced with its low level of foreign currency debt and strong core of institutions counting in its favor. Moody's decided this month against making any decisions on the country's credit ratings, currently 2 levels deep into sub-investment at BA2 with a negative outlook. The 2 other major rating firms, Fitch and S&P, also rate the country deep into junk. Telda, a Cairo-based digital banking application, has raised $5 million during its pre-seed funding round organized by United States firm Sequoia Capital. The funding comes as digital-only banks rise in popularity across the region, where 60% of the population is estimated to be under the age of 25. The investment by Sequoia was the first investment for the American venture capital firm in the North African region. Some of the participants in the round include Global Founders Capital and Class 5 Global. Telda recently announced it has received a license from Egypt's central bank to issue cards and onboard customers to its platform. It has 30,000 signups since it started its operations. Kenya is expected to receive about $410 million from the International Monetary Fund once a review of its financing program is completed by the International Lenders Executive Board in the coming weeks. The disbursement is part of the $2.34 billion finance package that the IMF extended to the country in April this year to help deal with the adverse effects of the COVID-19 pandemic and address Kenya's debt problem. The IMF revealed that the COVID-19 pandemic shock has unfortunately reversed some of the poverty reduction gains Kenya achieved in recent years, while public debt also remains elevated. The latest phase in the many attempts at providing solutions for Africa from outside of the continent is underway in France. The Summit on Financing for African Economies is hosted by French President Emmanuel Macron. There's more in this report.
The purpose of the summit is to support the economic recovery of African countries that have been affected by the health and economic crisis caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. It also aims to foster investments in Africa and avert the risk of excessive debt. The summit hopes to improve the solvency of African nations. How solvent or insolvent are many African countries? Delegates will deliberate on debt relief and support from the International Monetary Fund, IMF, through special drawing rights, SDRs. Leaders will also look at how to provide capital to the private sector on the African continent to support investment that will catalyze inclusive economic activity, create employment, and accelerate the attainment of sustainable development goals. Summit on the Financing of African Economies follows a series of global stimulus packages initiatives, including the World Bank's $14 billion fast-tracking of COVID-19 financing, the African Development Bank's $10 billion COVID-19 response facility, and the International Monetary Fund's concessional financing and debt relief to assist countries and companies in their response to the pandemic. European leaders, representatives of G7 and G20 countries, and of international institutions such as the IMF, World Bank, Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD, are among summit delegates. But will these financing options be without interest or merely suspended for the period that COVID-19 is still alive?
And that's all on business right here on NC Continental Prime. I'm Tolulokwe Adelaru Balogun. It's back to Suleiman.
Well, thanks, Tolulokwe. Now, in sports tonight, the possibility of the Fury-Joshua fight happening has suffered a setback after a court ruling. That's not too good a story for those who have been smarting and waiting for this all-time fight. Onyechi Obaru has all of it now. Onyechi, well, it doesn't sit pretty for a lot of Nigerians as well.
Of course, and a lot of boxing fans, Sulaiman, there. It's a longer-awaited unification bout, but now it is hanging in the balance. Okay, right now we begin in the world of sport, where boxing promoter Eddie Hearn is considering a plan B for Anthony Joshua and says Tyson Fury must clarify his week whether the pair can fight in the summer. This comes less than a week ago when Hearn said he did not have any backup plan in place because he was confident that Joshua Fury, the fight would be finalized. Now, Britain's Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua have agreed to a heavyweight title bout in Saudi Arabia on the 14th of August. But on Monday, it was ruled that Fury must face American Deontay Wilder for a third time on the 15th of September. Eddie Hearn, the promoter, has this to say.
You know, we can't wait around. We have a deal in place with Tyson Fury. We provided an unbelievable opportunity to him. You know, we were told by his team, Bob Arum, that, you know, the arbitration wouldn't be an issue. We could move forward with this fight. They were wrong, and that's on them. That's their responsibility. That's now their problem. We hope they can solve that problem. But we have to look after ourselves. We have to look after Anthony Joshua. We have to maintain the position of unified world champion. And those talks will continue. And we want to be in a position by the end of this week to know, are we fighting Tyson Fury or are we moving forward with another option? So, exciting, disappointing, boxing. But let's see. Let's see if Team Fury can pull something positive out of the bag for their fighter. I think he'll be disappointed. I think he was told that, you know, he could move forward with an AJ fight. Everyone's happy.
Away from that, in rugby, the South African city of Cape Town will host the 2022 World Cup Sevens. World Rugby made the announcement on Tuesday ahead of the competition, which will run between September 9 and 11 in 2022. The competition will be an 8th edition for men and 4th for the women. It will be contested by 24 men and 16 women team and is the first to be hosted in Africa. The top 8 men's team and top 4 women's team from the last sevens in San Francisco in 2018 have already secured automatic ticket for the qualification of the tournament in 2022. Now moving to tennis right now, Stan Wawrinka may not be fit in time to play in the French Open after failing to recover sufficiently from an operation he underwent in his left foot in March. The 36-year-old Swede, who won the clay court Grand Slam in 2015, has not played on the tour since the opening round loss in March. The world number 24 has been sharing videos and photos on social media from his base in Monaco, but sources say he will not be ready for the clay court Grand Slam, which starts in Paris on May 30th. And now to football. Manager Roy Hodgson will leave Crystal Palace when his contract expires at the end of the season. The 73-year-old former England boss said the time is right to step away from the rigors of the top-flight Premier League football. Now, Hodgson, who is the oldest person to manage the Premier League, began his managerial role 45 years ago with Swedish side Hampstead. He has managed 16 teams in 8 countries, including Inter Milan and Udinese, as well as the Switzerland, United Arab Emirates and Finland national sides. Now, Nigerian striker Taiwo Awoniyi has been granted a work permit to play in the United Kingdom 6 years after signing for Liverpool Football Club. The 23-year-old joined the Reds on a long-term deal in August 2015 from Nigeria's Imperial Academy, but has never played for the club due to his inability to secure a work permit. Awoniyi, who is currently on a 7th loan spell at Germany, the German side Union Berlin, is now eligible to be included in Liverpool's squad for the next season. The fit player, who has a contract with Liverpool until June 2023, scored 5 goals in 20 appearances for Union Berlin, despite an injury-littered, of course, campaign in the Bundesliga. He was part of Nigeria's Under-17 World Cup winning squad in 2013. And there you have it, sports stories at this time. I am W.H.O, but tonight we've been waiting for this undisputed bout, as he did say earlier, Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury. But maybe he gets to fight Alexander Usyk at this time, but boxing fans are not happy about this.
Well, the thing there is that for Anthony Joshua, he's been able to have win more, fans into the world of boxing across the continent, more so in his home country, Nigeria. Let's see how it goes in the days ahead.
We get to see. I'll take you for your word there.
Okay, now to other news. Following the release of Olamide's lead single for his upcoming album, our entertainment reporter Sam Dandy gives us more details about the YBNL boss as well as other albums to expect soon.
Thank you very much. And now to entertainment news. Nigerian hip-hop artist and YBNL boss Olamide first teased his upcoming album on the 18th of last month. He made a simple Instagram post with the album cover and the caption, UI Scooty the album, June 14th. Over the past week, the YBNL Nation boss gave his fans a series of teasers, and finally 3 days is Carpe Diem, his 11th studio album, which gave the fans 12 tracks, some of which are still major hits. Loading featuring Bad Boy Tim's, Infinity featuring Omale, and Triumphant featuring Bella Schmurder. Now, UI Scooty drops on the 14th of June next month, and that's great news. Although that's all the information we have at this time, no one has any idea of possible features either locally or internationally, but Olamide says we can pre-order.
And the award goes to
God's Engineering by AQ.
Well, that's not the only album we're expecting. On May 17th, Headies winning Nigerian rapper Gilbert Bani, popularly called AQ, announced that he's set to release another album. At this time, the title of the album is unknown, but it's set to be a follow-up to his previous album, God's Engineering, which earned him an award in the Best Rap Album category at the 13th Headies this year. On his Instagram, the rapper left a caption saying, "I had to take off the suits for this one. New album out this Friday, 21st. Stay with me, please." His previous album, released in March 2020, boasted 11 tracks, 3 of which had features. We look forward to this body of work, dropping in a few days, Friday to be precise. Now, we haven't forgotten that Grammy Award-winning artist Burna Boy also hinted that he would release a new album in August 2021. Via his Twitter account, a fan asked Burna Boy, "Are we having an album this year?" And he then responded, "Same time as last year, no worry." Now, if you recall, Burna Boy's Twice as Tall album was released on August 12th, 2020, and it won a Grammy earlier in the year. Although his response to that tweet was later deleted, many of his fans have taken his word for it. The Nigerian music star then dropped a track titled Kilometer, which after 2 weeks and over 3.8 million views still remains number 4 trending on YouTube. Now, whether this is the lead single of his upcoming album remains unclear, but we will keep you updated in the following weeks. We're looking forward to more music and certainly more Grammy-worthy albums. But of course, I'll bring you more updates as the weeks go by. Well, that's all entertainment news. I am Sam Dandy.
Thanks, Sam Dandy. And of course, that's a beat I've been bopping my head to lately. Well, that's all on the news at this hour. But before we go, let's take you to some of the major stories again. Nigeria's Kaduna state has declared the head of the country's main labor union wanted for economic sabotage. Workers in Mali have begun a 4-day strike over wages, bonuses and allowances. Finally, we told you that the World Health Organization has issued a new guidance on expired COVID-19 vaccines. Now follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. You can also download our mobile app on Apple Store and Play Store. You can also watch the News Central on Star Times Channel 274, AVO TV Channel 23, and live on YouTube. I'm Sulaiman. Many thanks for watching.